Hello, welcome to my midnight pre-patch Frost Mage guide. So we're going to cover both your specs, the new rotations for single target AOE talents, and then also just what's changing, a little catch up. So I did want to go over what is changing for Frost first. And so all your spells really do something different now. Baseline, the main changes would be like, let's say Frozen Orb now follows enemies. Glacial Spike now replaces Frostbolt on a timer every 25 seconds. You just generate an icicle every 5 seconds. And then once you get 5, you get Glacial Spike. Instead of Shatter as you know it, we now just apply freezing, which is basically festering wounds. So you can see like I applied 5 freezing with this flurry. Ice Lance will consume that, and then just the stacks of freezing is what does damage rather than my Ice Lance. So essentially your single target spells apply freezing, your Ice Lance consumes it. They removed Icy Veins. You now have Ray of Frost, you just channel that. It applies some freezing and does some big damage, and then it turns into Comet Storm if you have that talented. So you can just press Comet Storm. Comet Storm will also consume freezing, like Ice Lance, but an AoE, which is helpful. Blizzard and Orb do not interact with freezing at all. They just exist. You just press them on CD. They also no longer have any cooldown reduction between each other. So it's just, again, press them on CD. Orb's now kind of closer to like a 1 minute cooldown again. If you do end up getting a Fingers of Frost, all that does is make your Ice Lance act as if it consumed a number of freezing. So if I Ice Lance, it'll just do damage. See? Ice Lance just does damage. And if Ice Lance without it, it'll consume the freezing and do damage. We do still have like Frostfire Empowerment and stuff for like instant casts and whatnot. But yeah. They also brought Water Elemental back. Water Elemental actually does less than it did before. It no longer gives Brain Freeze. So it kind of just does damage. And they buffed it. So it does a decent amount of damage. So now we are going to play it. You won't play it sometimes in Mythic Plus, but a lot of times it will be worth the play in Mythic Plus just for the single target value and whatnot. So anyway, that's the quick highlights of what changed. Of course, I would highly recommend you read your talents and whatnot, but we're gonna get into the rotations. They also, if you remember, it was a goal for them to reduce defensives in Midnight. Honestly, didn't really see any other classes get reduced defenses, and they removed the damage reduction from Mirror Image and the damage reduction from Greater Invisibility. So that doesn't feel very good, because I would have hoped they would have like removed one of Warlock's defenses as well, or given us some passive defensive boost for us losing 2 active defenses. They didn't do that. We also lost Mass Barrier, so 3 active defenses that we lost. And we have no additional passive survivability. In fact, that's just like very questionable in my mind. So I think we're actually gonna feel pretty squishy in Midnight. Frost did get this talent where now you can have Ice Block and Ice Barrier having additional charge instead of going Cold Snap. And there's pluses and minuses to this. If you need more ice blocks in an encounter, this is worse. But in general, this is just a comfier choice. Because, with this, your ice block cooldown is just going to run itself down naturally. With Cold Snap, your cooldown for Cold Snap and your cooldown for ice block can recover concurrently. So, you can use them back to back and then have them both recover, and then use them back to back again or something like that. So, but yeah, I think you're mostly just gonna always take Glacial Bulwark, and then they buff the barrier slightly, but I don't think this really makes up for the passive defenses not existing, and the fact that they didn't really reduce the defenses of other classes. So not a fan of that. They did also add this choice node here that just gives you like something that will automatically use alter. Most of the time, if you are good about using alter, you're not going to take this because it uses your alter and only for like a 25% health gain. So no, most of the time you're going to be taking this, but if you are really bad at casting alter, then you should just always take this other one, and then it will cast your alter for you and just heal you and not do any of the weird position stuff. So that's good for people that don't use alter. The other thing in the class tree is they removed ice flows from the game for some godforsaken reason. They like think that if they make the choice node between Shimmer and Blink, and they're like, oh, what if we increase Shimmer's cooldown again? People will surely take Blink. It's like, no, no one is ever gonna take Blink unless there is a root or a stun that they have to get out of. So this not ice flows being completely deleted is absolutely terrible, given that we just now have a channeled CD that we have no way of casting at all moving and firing up power cousin back. This is probably the worst change they did in Midnight, in my opinion. Like, I need ice flows. Why would you ever do this? This makes literally no sense. So I really hope that they add ice flows, but we're kind of running out of time, and it would be just massive disappointment if we have this fucking choice node that we're not actually gonna. It's this isn't a choice. You're never gonna take Blink, so not a fan of that. I thought we'd quickly go over the tuning that happened on Wednesday. So they've just nerfed Frostfire's AOE, which it needed. It was very, very, very strong in AOE. It's now much more balanced with Spellslinger, though it is still winning out at max level, it seems, in AOE, that is. And then they tried to buff Spellslinger a little bit. This is a really bad AOE buff. Honestly, I would have heavily preferred that they buff Spellfrost teachings. And Spellslinger probably does still need a little bit of help in AoE. But yeah, in general, in single target, Spellslinger is now doing quite good. Then down here, they just reduced the power of Frostbolt Flurry. This is kind of funny because Ice Lance is the one that right now doesn't really press, or sorry, not Ice Lance. Frostfire is the one that right now doesn't really press Ice Lance. They nerf Frostbolt, so this only nerfs Spellslinger because it does not nerf Frostfirebolt. So they just nerfed Spellslinger's Frostbolt. It wasn't really casting Frostbolt that much though, so kind of weird. You need to kind of recondition yourself. Whenever they say Ice Lance damage, that matters like not a zilch. The shatter damage is all the damage that your Ice Lance will do. So functionally, it only got like a kind of minor buff. They mostly just like nerf Flurry and stuff. What this really did was it killed the like completely no Ice Lance build for Frostfire, and not even really killed. It's like now just 1% worse than Ice Lancing. But Frostfire still doesn't Ice Lance very often. It only Ice Lances with Thermal Void, which is a buff from your tree. So that's what these do. I mean, functionally just makes the specs much more even in AoE, and then makes it so that Frostfire has no rotation change from what it was doing, even though they wanted to change what Frostfire was doing. So yeah. So for pre-patch, it does seem currently that Spellslinger is just a bit better than Frostfire. But you can play Frostfire. It's only like in general a couple percentage points behind. But yeah, Spellslinger for all situations essentially. You can probably find that Frostfire might be better in like lower keys, especially because it has the massive damage amping its glacial spikes, which makes it do much more consistent like bursts pack to pack. Glacial Spike is really, really good for Mythic Plus because our icicles generate passively, but they generate a lot faster out of combat. So in the downtime between packs, if you actually have it, you're just like guaranteed to get another Glacial Spike, even if it's only like 10 seconds instead of the normal like 25 between Glacial Spikes. So yeah, Spellslinger is gonna be the way to go, but Frostfire is certainly very playable. So now for the Spellslinger talents, this is what it's going to look like for pre-patch. You'll notice, well, for starters, we're not taking these 3 talents. That's kind of the only option because you want to take something off that has no value, like Slippery Slinging, and then Archmage's Wrath and Signature Spell are just much less impactful than trying to remove these 2 or these 2 or Controlled Instincts or something. We did get Turbo just wrecked, by the way, because Reactive Barrier only goes up to 25% more based on your missing health. If you look at Frostfire, they didn't change imbued warding, so it's just always casting Blazing Barrier at 25% effectiveness. So essentially, Reactive Barrier is just always worse than Blazing Barrier now with the Frostfire thing, which makes literally no sense. So they shouldn't have done that. But yeah, and then this is your spec tree. We don't take Comet Storm, we don't take this Glacial Spike node. In large part, the reason we don't take like Comet Storm is because we can only generate splinters by consuming freezing stacks from Ice Lance. So pressing Comet Storm literally just gives us less splinters because it can consume freezing, and same with like if we want Glacial Shatter. And we don't care about Glacial Chill because we are already massively overcapping our freezing stacks as Spellslinger, because we have this node where Frostfires randomly apply freezing. So you will notice a lot of overcap. Otherwise, it's pretty much exactly the same. You're still taking the Brain Freeze from Frozen Orb and whatnot. But yeah. So then if we take a look at the rotation here, it's pretty similar to the Frostfire rotation. I just took Comet Storm out because you're never going to play it. So yeah. So Frozen Orb, charge priority, no thing there. Ray Frost, you actually only ever want to cast this if your last cast was Orb, or if you're about to like end the fight. The main reason for this, aside from the fact that Orb generates splinters, and then your Ray of Frost is going to double your splinters, much like how Spellslinger had that happen with Icy Veins or Arcane Surge or whatnot. The other benefit is, you just don't have to cast Frozen Orb during your Splinter bonus duration here. And then when you do have Hand of Frost, it will give you a damage amp while you're casting Hand of Frost or Ray of Frost. So your Frozen Orb is going to benefit from that while this is out. So that's the main reasons that you're going to be waiting to cast it after Ray. It's a big deal. So then at like a high priority, you're going to Ice Lance with Thermal Void. We're actually not going to care about the stacks of freezing, because with Spellslinger you're essentially guaranteed to have high stacks. But if you want, you can have like a pseudo and greater than 12. Because while Frostfire's Ice Lance only consumes 4 freezing, Spellslinger's actually consumes 6. You have this, which gives an extra stack baseline to bring up to 5, but we generate a splinter for every 2 freezing stacks. So we have to go this talent here to get to 6, so we generate 3 splinters with every Ice Lance instead of only generating 2 and just losing out value on 1 stack. So because of the fact that we can't take Comet Storm and the fact that we need this Heart of Ice talent to make our splinters function, it does have like some forced diversity in talents, which is, kind of a good thing if it's a little boring. It also means we can take this talent where Ice Lance reduces the cooldown of like Ray of Frost. So yeah. Anyway, but of course this is our actual talent build for Prepatch. What I was showing you was just me throwing my points in random stuff so that I can showcase this well enough. Anyway, back to the priority. And then after that, you're in Glacial Spike. 5th is going to just be Flurry with Brain Freeze. You want to make sure you're getting your Thermal Void before you ever try Ice Lancing, because it just makes it more efficient. And then lastly, you'll just Flurry, and then last is right after that is Frostbolt. So pretty simple stuff. Your opener is going to be slightly different because you don't have Comet Storm. So you're just going to GS Flurry Orb, Ray, Flurry, and then spam Ice Lance to remove your freezing. So let's give that a go. Alright, so we're going to do our opener, Glacial Spike, Flurry, Orb, and then Ray. After this, we're going to overcap our freezing. We're going to press Flurry so we can get Thermal Void, then we Ice Lance, and we're just going to keep Ice Lancing until we get rid of all of our freezing, which is going to take quite a while. And I'm just going to Flurry, but I randomly got some extra freezing stacks. I technically didn't need to. That is going to be a big thing for Spellslinger. It's going to get a lot of random freezing stacks. A lot more than you'll see here, because here I don't have Hand of Frost talented. Yeah, I cast a couple extra spells than I should have before I cast my Orb. No, super used to playing Spellslinger, but that's right. Then we should cast all our Ice Lances till we have no freezing again. And then I'll cast my Flurry and then go back to Frostbolt, fishing for Brain Freeze. Get our Brain Freeze, so we're just going to Flurry and then use our Ice Lances. Holding this Ray of Frost for my Frozen Orb. really should have Glacial Spiked earlier. It's kind of just casting random stuff. That's going to lead to a really awkward situation here where technically after this I should Glacial Spike. Even though, I'm already like fully capped on freezing. So I just, have to Glacial Spike, which is why I should have done it before the orb. But I still would have been Omega capped on everything, so it's not a big deal. Get rid of all our Ice Lance stacks, and then we get back to Frostbolting. Our orb's almost back up from Spellfrost teachings. Kind of crazy. Ice Lance with my Thermal Void. Did another extra random Ice Lance. Didn't even notice that, honestly, when I was playing. Gotta watch out for that. And yeah, just more of the same. I'm going to Glacial Spike before I consume this Thermal Void so that I can get a Fingers of Frost, because I didn't yet have quite enough freezing. Like here I end up not without enough freezing, but that's fine. We actually don't really care about that. Nothing we can do about it aside from overcap some more flurries potentially. So again, holding for my orb. So then we're just gonna orb and Ray, and we do the same sequence of flurry and spam Ice Lance after this. I'm also going to get a Glacial Spike pretty soon, in the next 4 seconds, so probably right after I'm done with all my Ice Lance spamming. Yep, there you go. So now I immediately Glacial Spike and Ice Lance some more. And yeah, hopefully that gives you a good idea of how Spellslinger is playing in single target. For your AoE with Spellslinger, we're still not taking the same hero talents, but our spec tree shifts up a little bit. We're gonna like drop Piercing Cold, so that we can take Splitting Ice and Fractured Frost by dropping Rhymecaster. We also drop Deep Shedder as well, and then we take Freezing Winds, and we change our Brain Freeze from Frozen Orb to Whiteout, which is just CDR when we Ice Lance for Frozen Orb. And then we're also going to slot in Freezing Rain, less so for the instant cast Blizzards and more just because it flat increases Blizzard's damage by 20%. We're also going to make sure we have Flash Freeze, just for consistent Fingers of Frost. So that's going to be your Prepatch AOE talent for Spellslinger. For the rotation, it's not really going to look too much different from live. Again, you're not going to have comments from Talented, but if you really want to play it, I'm not going to stop you. So it'd be number 1. And then here you're going to be just casting Frozen Orb on CD, and then I have this blurb where if you have Wintertide Talented, that's the Brain Freeze one, then use only with Brain Freeze. In my suggested build, I'm saying we don't play that, so you can just cast Frozen Orb. Ray of Frost, if you just cast Orb, just like before, your Ice Lance with Thermal Void, Glacial Spike, Flurry if you have Brain Freeze, Blizzard, pretty low priority, Ice Lance with greater than 6 freezing, Flurry, and then Frostbolt. So yeah, it's a little weird because Blizzard's just so far down the priority, and like Frozen Orb and whatnot is above, and to make it clear, you will be overcapping freezing at times. Both Glacial Spike and Flurry are above just a standard Ice Lance to ensure that you're not overcapping freezing. So yeah, your opener is going to change slightly because our precast is now going to be Blizzard instead of Glacial Spike. So you're going to do Blizzard, Flurry, Frozen Orb, Ray, Glacial Spike, Flurry. So, and then you would go into, Ice Lance spam while keeping up Blizzard and whatnot. So I do have Water Elemental in this build just because it's strong single target. You can play Lonely Winter if you really want. You're just like saying, oh, I want 1% or 1.5% less single target for 1% AOE. So it's totally fine to do that. Just if you do swap this, make sure that on Spellslinger you have to change this choice node to make sure you actually get value. You would then go Shifting Shards instead of a Tuned Familiar. Anytime you have Water Elemental, you're taking a Tuned Familiar, and in this case, this build has Water Elemental. So we will now do our showcase. So we're going to start with our opener, Blizzard, Flurry, Orb, Ray. Then we'll do our Glacial Spike after Ray. And start Ice Lancing. Making sure to refresh our Blizzard. And yeah, I mean, functionally we're just doing our single target rotation again, just with, you know, we're gonna have more frozen orbs, like, and more. We're gonna be tossing in blizzards and whatnot. Here's Flurry, yep, and then I just Ice Lance until I'm out of freezing, and then I'll Flurry again. Here I actually flurried because my second target was gonna be out of freezing. Doesn't really matter either way; he's gonna be out. We don't really need to pay attention to our second target. I'm just doing it kind of unnecessarily. So. And then we're holding our Ray for Orb again. And then we just shoot out an insane number of splinters. That wasn't actually that insane. That's okay. Now it's insane. There you go. That's a lot of splinters. But yeah, now I'm going to stack my freezing up. Looking for a brain freeze because the thermal void buff is so strong for my Ice Lance. Refresh my Blizzard, cast my Glacial Spike, and then I'll cast Orb because it came up. Then we'll Flurry for my Thermal Void, and start Ice Lancing. I'm going to probably overcap freezings very slightly here, but we'll Blizzard into a Flurry, and then we can Ice Lance once, and then we go back to Frostbolting. Very riveting gameplay. Get our Orb off cooldown so we can Orb into Ray. Yeah, we are overcapping a decent number of freezing in this situation because we had to cast Glacial Spike to get that on cooldown. But that's alright. It's kind of just Spellslinger actually does naturally overcap a lot on freezing, especially once you have Hand of Frost. I don't have Hand of Frost in this situation, but if I did, it would have been even crazier. Here I wasn't Ice Lancing just because my second target, but yeah. They won't be completely equal because your Frozen Orb splinters go on random targets, and also like this Glacial Salt isn't hitting all of them and whatnot, but okay, I thought we could start off kind of comparing the two priority lists. This is going to be a bit of a tumultuous time. Like, you're going to probably see a lot of different talents, a lot of different priorities and whatnot. These ones are currently the ones that are probably going to be in your sim, and they're very similar to all the other profiles I've seen. So I don't think there's going to be any major changes to this. And this should be simpler than anything you see elsewhere, but we'll find out as we go. Different time. So I thought this would be nice to do a comparison. On the left is our current Frostfire rotation. On the right is our new one, the priority. So it's a little bit simpler. You know, honestly, not that much simpler, but you know, some of these things are simplified for the reason that you don't have shifting power, so your cooldowns aren't shifting as much. Comet Storm is only right after Ray Frost. You're always going to do Ray Frost then Comet Storm, so you don't need to pay attention to it at all. And then Icicles you no longer interact with you just passively gain icicles up to 5, and then it will replace your frostbolt with glacial spike. So yeah, the big thing is there's no Fingers Frost condition and there's no Winter's Chill condition for Ice Lancing, and there's no replacement Winter's Chill freezing condition for Ice Lancing either. You're just only ever Ice Lancing around this one buff, because Frostfire is very much playing a minimal Ice Lance build currently. And the main reason for that is just that if you look at the Frostfire Hero talents, it'll say casting Frostfire spells, and that has like benefits to fire spells. And so, you know, none of this benefits Ice Lance. Literally, your entire tree for Frostfire, none of it does literally anything for Ice Lance. So you're not going to press Ice Lance, because why would you? You can shatter via Glacial Spike, and you can shatter from Comet Storm. So you just rarely press it. This is not what your talent tree is going to look like. I'm trying to simulate Prepatch, so instead of having 4 points in Hand of Frost, I have it in some random stuff. But let's take a look at the talents and then the rotation. These are going to be your single target talents for Frostfire. Here, you're going to not take this row of talents just because this is an empty thing. This is just, it's not good. Yeah, they're the worst talents there. And this is what your class tree is going to look like, or spec tree. I'm not going to worry about the class tree at all. Just probably you're going to end up taking all the capstones if you can, and then like don't take some of the other stuff. It doesn't really matter. So there's nothing really crazy here. You have literally no cleave capability in this build though. If you do talent cleave abilities, because now Splay Ice is not something we're just going to be taking always in single target. And they also split Splay Ice into 2 things actually. For some reason, they made Splay Ice, Flurry, and Frostbolt, and Fractured Frost, Ice Lance, which seems confusing because it was literally the other way around last expansion. But you know what? If that's what they want to do, then that's what they want to do, I guess. But as you take these 2, your 2 target damage increases by 40%. Whether that's good 2 target damage, probably not. Probably not good 2 target damage. But we'll see. It's pre-patch tuning. It's going to be whack. So yeah, this is the build. You're taking Water Elemental. If you really want, you can not take Water Elemental, but Water Elemental is just significantly better. This is the buff that's going to cause us to Ice Lance. Essentially, every time you consume Rain Freeze, it just makes your next Ice Lance consume double the freezing stacks. So you don't really have to think about that. And then we again have this where Glacial Spike just removes 5 freezing as well. But again, you also don't have to think about that because it's not in there. This is new, where Frozen Orb just gives you a Brain Freeze. This is competing with Frozen Orb CDR, which you can take an AOE, but you also don't really have to take an AOE. You could just treat Frozen Orb as 1-minute cooldown, but we'll get to that later. So, yep, that's the single target build. So let's do a rotation showcase. So, as a reminder, we're essentially just trying to get a Brain Freeze and then Ice Lance, and that's our whole combo playstyle. So we do our opener, Glacial Spike, Flurry, Orb, Ray. Then we're going to Flurry after this, because we don't have Thermal Void. And then I'm going to Comet Storm, I'm going to Ice Lance, because I do have Thermal Void. I'm going to Flurry. I think I have Frostfire Bolt, doesn't matter, I'm going to Flurry. And then Ice Lance, because I have Thermal Void, because it's Brain Freeze. And then I keep Frostfire Bolting when I should be Flurrying again, doesn't really matter though. And then we're just going to cast Frostfire Bolt, because I don't have a Brain Freeze, so there's no reason to Ice Lance, because I don't have Thermal Void, which comes from Brain Freeze. So I get a Brain Freeze, immediately slam it, and now I can Ice Lance once, so I Ice Lance once, and I go back to spamming Frostfire Bolt. There's going to be a lot of Frostfire Bolts here. Bear with me. Again, looking for a Brain Freeze, consuming Brain Freeze here. It's going to give us Thermal Void, so now I Ice Lance once, and I should have pressed Flurry. I keep pressing Frostfire Bolt. It's okay. It's not a huge deal. But yeah, you do want to slam your Flurries as instant casts when you have them available. Get another Brain Freeze, so now I'm just going to cast Flurry, and then I'm going to cast Ice Lance once, and I go back to pressing Frostfire Bolt. And we're just waiting for my orb to come back up, and then I'll orb into Ray. Flurry, Ice Lance, and I'm a Flurry again, and I Ice Lance again because I had another Brain Freeze. So I did 2 back-to-back Thermal Voids there. flurry because it's up. Frostfire Bolt while I'm waiting. This orb's gonna give me brain freeze, and I'm gonna ray. I don't care at all about my freezing, so I'm gonna flurry here for thermal void. Then I'm just gonna Comet Storm. You could have done either way, it doesn't really matter. Then I Ice Lance for my thermal void, and I go back to pressing Frostfire Bolt, looking for a brain freeze. I got my brain freeze, so I'm gonna flurry, and then I'm gonna Ice Lance once, and then I go back to pressing my Frostfire Bolt and casting any flurries that come up. Got my brain freeze, so I cast it. I get thermal voids, and I Ice Lance once. It's guaranteed. Oh my god, another brain freeze, so we flurry, and then we Ice Lance once, and then we go back to Frostfire Bolt. And yeah, that's just, repeats. So it's a lot of Frostfire Bolts. And that's it. Yeah, I'm just gonna fire off this flurry, Ice Lance once, and be done. For Frostfire, your AOE tree is gonna look like this. So now we don't have the Ray of Frost CDR, but we do have Comet Storm, and we also have Hailstones, which just reduces the time it takes to get you a Glacial Spike by about 5 seconds. In this AOE build, I'm also suggesting you take the Frozen Orb cooldown reduction, just because it's fun. But if you do want to play Wintertide, that's again like less AOE for more single target and also more cleave. Just because Flurry now, of course, cleaves to a second target. This doesn't have a lot of Ice Lance talents because it rarely Ice Lances. So to look then at how it is Ice Lancing, here's the AOE. So our opener is essentially exactly the same as the Spellslinger one. It just has Comet Storm after the Ray of Frost because it has Comet Storm talented. But yeah, you're just gonna Flurry if you don't Thermal Void. You're gonna Glacial Spike, Frozen Orb, Comet Storm, Blizzard, Ray of Frost, Ice Lance with Thermal Void, and Frostbolt. I don't really like this sequencing. I'm probably gonna do a little out of sequence. There's no reason for you to, for instance, Flurry if I would just bump these under like these two, and I think that's going to be better, essentially. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. On to the AoE. Yeah, I like prioritizing the AoE stuff above, flurrying and whatnot, but it's not really correct, just a very minor detail. So, go ahead and do our opener, right? Blizzard, Flurry, Orb, Ray, Comet Storm, then Glacial Spike, and then we'll Flurry, re-put up our Blizzard, and then just start casting Frostfire Bolts because we don't have Thermal Void. So we're doing the same thing as single target, trying to get a Brain Freeze for our Thermal Void. Boop, we got a Brain Freeze, got a Thermal Void after casting it, and then we Ice Lance once, and then we go back to Frostfire Bolting to keep up our Blizzard. And then, yeah, I mean, it's literally the same thing we're doing single target. So it's not terribly exciting. Here, instead of blizzarding, technically I should have flurried. Because I did get another flurry charge somehow, super delayed. So yeah, should have flurried and then blizzard based on the APL, but then you're going to be, Ice Lancing away your Thermal Voids, make sure that happens, and then right back to Frostfire Bolting. So, Spellslinger is definitely a little bit more exciting than this, but, this is something that's different, so. These are Orb. I think in Showcase I'm using the Brain Freeze talent from Orb instead of the cooldown one. I'm not sure. Doesn't matter much, you can play either. Just a choice of single target versus AoE. So it is not worth it to play Severe Temperatures, surprisingly, in AoE. Yeah, nothing too crazy here. Blizzard, Flurry, Ice Lance, and then back to Frostfire Bolting. Oh, no, we got another Flurry. So we Flurry, then we Ice Lance, and then we Glacial Spike. I think that was bad Ice Lance, but yeah, that's because that was the end. We can talk a little bit about gear. So in terms of like stat priority, you're gonna find that it's kind of mastery equal crit, better than verse, better than haste. So haste is now your worst stat, absolutely. So you're gonna want to remove most of it. For myself, on my Prepatch character, I just have a bunch of mastery because I'm using a number of like the raid items that have really high mastery. So I actually like super duper want crit and then verse for myself. But yeah, mastery is quite good now. Hopefully it stays that way. So you're gonna want to prioritize that, and you are gonna want a pretty strong amount of crit, and that might end up changing a little bit of like your talents and might make you want to take like Deep Shatter. We're currently not taking that in most talent profiles, aside from single target. So, which is what I was simming, which is probably why the value was high, but it's also high for AOE. Anyway, so yeah, there's no like crazy items you're gonna want to equip. I sim myself with like all the trinkets that I have, and none of them really changed in value. But I'm not entirely sure if you can really recraft in Prepatch, so you probably want to do your recrafts into like those stats before the thing actually launches. And I'm probably gonna craft some jewelry as well myself. But yeah, that's it really. There's no other gear changes. It's kind of easy. And I would, keep like an open mind about, rotation changes, talent changes. What I'm telling you here should be very solid. I mean, there's just a number of different talent iterations that will give you like more single target in like AOE and more AOE and less single target in Mythic Plus. Not so much changes for your like actual single target build, that's kind of locked in. But for like Mythic Plus, I think there's gonna be a decent amount of variations as people try out different things, and so I, tell you should definitely work on trying those out yourself as well. And there will probably be some rotation stuff coming up. Like a big thing is that for Midnight Frost, it's pretty worth it to um, hold Calm Storm until all the targets you're in combat with have at least 16 freezing. And that's not really necessary in pre-patch because we're not going to take these talents and these buff Calm Storm and Meteor. So dropping these makes it not really that worth it to do that. So, but there will be some minor variations. We kind of shake things up, but most of the work is going to go into midnight work, less so than pre-patch. So pre-patch stuff will be less supported, though Frost will be supported in Sims and whatnot. You can always ask me questions of the Mage Discord stuff, but a lot of the information is going to come from midnight and say like a character that's has like a midnight tier set and midnight level talents and whatnot. So yeah, in terms of UI, I will be making I probably will be making a UI in pre-patch. I'm not quite sure yet. This is obviously like super basic that I just am using to do this testing. I did it in like 10 minutes. So I'll make a better one in pre-patch certainly. Whether I think they'll probably look quite a bit different from the midnight one because I think that there's a lot of things that a lot of add-ons that won't be ready in midnight or in pre-patch that will be ready in midnight. So yeah, I will probably start having a UI available again in midnight, depending on if people actually end up liking what that looks like or whatnot. I do have Patreon going now. It does not have anything to do with UI. It's mostly like, oh, I'm gonna do log reviews and I do like talk about alternate rotations and stuff. That's not really gonna be active again until midnight is actually fully out. But if you want to check it out, it will be linked in the description and everything. So yeah, but that should be it. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm excited for midnight. I think there's some very sad things, right? Losing Ice Flows, no way to protect your Ray Frost. It's kind of like weird priority where now like Flurry and Ice Lance are oftentimes above your AoE spells. It just feels a little strange. But at least we're not arcane mages, right?